Hi, my name is Inge with a Danish accent talking to you about my passion for knitting. I'm a fairly new knitter and definitely a new YouTuber, so thank you for joining me here on my journey becoming a more experienced knitter. I am all excited by learning everything new, so I try to share my new learnings in these videos. Today, I will try to show you, the more practical side of it, how I do the blocking, prolong sleeves without ripping back, how I do cables and so on. So as a continuation of the series I've made in the previous episodes about merino wool, we will today complete the merino story with some fun facts of the sheep and the origin and so on. I've been looking in my stash for the more wintry yarns, which I call the toothy ones, the more rustic ones. So I will show you my favorite ones, and I have some shade cards to share with you. We will also continue the talk about my designs, and so let's get started. The first finished object is this small accessory, the Sophie Scarf designed by Petiteknit. You probably know it already because it's rather famous, and I understand why. I bought this pattern a while back, and I've made quite a few of those for my daughter. She likes it very much. And at first I started using the recommended yarn and gauge, but along the way I knew how to do it, so I just pick a yarn from my storage, and because you start here and I continue to the width I like and go by symmetry the other way down again here. And this time I use Drops Flora. It's half alpaca almost and wool, so it's very nice and squishy. And I really like the detail here on the scarf with these I-cord edges. So I guess you wear it like this. So it's quite a nice and warm and fine functional piece. So I haven't made one for myself though, because most often I don't wear either scarves or hats or gloves because I'm quite warm and isolated, I would say. So I guess I'm just like the elephants. I have to use my hands and ears to ventilate, just like they use their ears to cool down. Okay, fun aside. Onwards to the next finished object. When I cleaned up in my yarn or crafting studio, I came across the shelf of hibernating projects. Yeah, they are ongoing whips, but I haven't worked on them recently. And I saw this piece, a vest intended for my grandson. I guess I was at this stage. So how come this was hibernating? Yeah, I guess I cast on too many stitches. It was way too wide for him back then, but now a year later actually it works very fine, and I thought, well, I will finalize this one and use it as a test piece for Colourwork, working on the wrong side, so back and forth. And I found a stitch pattern of these owls because this is a favorite bird of my grandson. He loves birds just as his granddad. But before we talk more about it, let's have a look at the process of wet blocking and using one of the tips and tricks from my previous video on how to try to prevent pilling of your finished garment. I'm now in front of the freezer trying to follow my own advice from the previous episodes. So let's see what is hiding in here. Oh, finished objects. Let's unpack the bags from the freezer. Actually, the feeling when taking this out of the freezer, it's not cold at all, actually, just like usual. This is a very amazing thing about wool yarn. Let's look at it before I steam block it. You can see the owls here for Robin, and knitting forth and back. I had a really hard time with these long floats where there's up to, I guess, 9 stitches in between, so they are very irregular. I guess it was my very first time knitting forth and back, and I've refrained from doing it a very long time because I felt it was very difficult. I guess it's not that difficult actually, but of course I have to practice the tension. But now I will do like my mother told me when I was a child. So I just have this kitchen, what do you call it, cloth towel, and I have an evaporator with water and just an iron. It is actually a steam iron, but I just do like my mom told me. So let's see what happens. Yeah, something happened. Let's do some more. I think I dare put a bit more. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not talking so much because I'm focused, but I try not to keep the iron too long at the same place. Let's see. Yeah, it really helps down here, but I guess, yeah. Beginner knitting, working on the backside of Colourwork cannot be saved with an iron. But you have to start somewhere, right? So. It helps a bit. Okay, I'll do it a bit more by myself, and then we can look at it again when I'm in the sofa. So here's the result up close. As you can see, I didn't manage to even out this new beginner's struggle with the long strands. Actually, there's 11 stitches between the ears, so quite a distance. But yeah, it was a good test piece for me, and I definitely have to work more on how to do it on the wrong side and get hold of how to do the stranding. I learned in other videos that you can make kind of pockets for the long strands, so I will try this out later on. So yeah, and had I started this again just for harmony of the vest, I would have started the owls a bit lower so they are not up here at the neck. But anyway, it was a test piece. But when it was sitting there on my table of finished objects, my daughter came by and said, "Wow, what nice owls! Are these are for Robin, right?" And I said, "Yes." So I guess it will be used anyway, and I guess this is also the charm of hand knitted pieces. You can see they are made with love and the flaws of a new beginner. When walking through my yarn studio and doing a cleanup, I had the overview and took forward my winter yarns. And I will share with you here my absolute favorite ones. These are the Norwegian wools from Rauma and from Hillesvåg, and also my favorites are the Shetland wools from Jameson's and Jameson and Smith, these two companies. But we will look at shade cards and so on later. But how come these are my favorites? So let's have a look at a poster and see the amazing properties of wool. First of all, there's the comfort. Take a look here at the picture of the different fiber types, because here it's very obvious that there is a difference between the merino wool and the more rough wool due to the surface properties of the fiber. And you say that the less the diameter, the finer the wool, the less itchiness you will feel. And of course, then these more rough wools from Rauma and Shetland, they will feel more itchy to the skin than the soft merino wool. However, it's of course a personal preference, and I would say I'm resistant to the itchiness because I don't feel it like that. I feel the squishiness and yeah, the softness due to these air pockets in the wool. So let's move on to the other amazing characteristics. The wool has a high elasticity, and you could say it has memory because you can stretch it beyond recognition and it would find its own form when relaxed and get as good as new. It is temperature regulating, and this is a whole sign in itself. But let me show you a picture to help explain what it is. So, in the bottom part here, the orange, this pictures your skin, and the gray part pictures the woolen fabric. So, these air pockets in the fabric help you transport the moisture from your skin to the outer atmosphere, and the other way around. The outer atmosphere travels through the air pockets to your skin, and hence in this way it is temperature regulating, and you will no, you don't feel the ventilation, but you still feel nice and comfy because this moisture is transported away from your skin. And this is a very amazing ability, and in this way you can have high intensity activity and still feel nice and comfy because the fabric and this fiber, it can hold up till 1/3 of its own dry weight before it will feel wet to the touch, and this is really amazing. And when looking at this moisture management ability, we can also talk about this odor resistance, because you will also experience that you don't smell as much in these woolen t-shirts as in synthetic fiber or other materials. So how come? Because the smell from your skin is not due to the moisture that you evaporate. It is due to the bacteria having a feast in your sweat. And when these bacteria metabolize your nutrients in the sweat, so to speak, they generate a combustion, what do you call it? Nedbrydningsprodukter, what do you call it? Yeah, they produce acid-like substances, and these are the ones smelling. So, wow, yeah. And hence, you see, if you can transport the moist away continuously, hence the less you will smell. Ain't that great? And actually, this is also the reason why you don't have to wash it that often, or not at all, actually, because due to this temperature or moisture management ability, you can leave it outside in high humidity and it will ventilate and regenerate itself and get odorless if there was something in the fabric. So fantastic. I get all thrilled every time I think about it. I don't know why, but the ability of nature to figure things out, ain't it wonderful when you come to think of all the things that have to get in place in a microscopic level. Yeah, wow. Okay, let's move on to the dirt resistance. So it is both a dirt and moist repellent, which is also a good ability. And fire resistance, what is this? It's most easy to explain if you compare it to a synthetic fiber, because if you ignite these fiber types, let's do it in an upcoming episode, because it's actually quite funny to see different fibers, also plant fibers, how they behave. But anyway, If you ignite a synthetic fiber, it will catch on a flame and it will melt. And if a synthetic fabric melt on you, it will stick to the skin and you will burn. However, when you try to get fire on a wool, it will not ignite with a flame. It kind of dissolves, and in this way it doesn't stick to your skin. So if you again are outdoor activities, get too close to a bonfire, you are much better off wearing a wool instead of a synthetic fiber, and it might make the big difference on your degree of burning. Yeah. And the last one I will talk about today is the anti-static ability, and without getting into too much depth of this physics, it's because it is of a neutral charge, so that compared to other textiles, when it is rubbed against the skin, it will feel static and adhere to your skin, but this is not the case with wool. So yeah, amazing. Let me show you this cardigan. How old do you think this Norwegian cardigan is, with the typical Nordic patterns? I can tell you, this is 75 years old, made by my mom, who was a Norwegian. She made this in 48, just after the Second World War, when she got to Denmark by my dad. He was a soldier in Norway. So yeah, I would say it looks as good as new. No pilling, nothing at all. And I can tell you, I've seen her wearing this a lot. So I have a dream of copying this one made by her. Look at the detail at the bottom part. I haven't seen this kind of ribbing before. So I bought my favorite yarn from Rauma in natural white, and this one is called spring green, vårgrøn, and I will skip this embroidery part. I am not skilled in this, and yeah, of course I could buy this band in Norway, but I guess it will be more wearable in my wardrobe without this band. However, I have bought these in, you can have them in silver or in tin. I bought these buttons, or what do you call them when there's a hook. So yeah, my absolute favorite. And I thought, well, for the new project, when making the twisted forest sweater into an adult garment, I will use this one from Rauma. It's the same kind of yarn, just in another gauge, 16 to 18 stitches per 4 inches, and it's called Fivel. So besides this Norwegian yarn, I have other favorites, and this will be the Shetland wools. They are just lovely, airy and fluffy, and nice. I have these color shades because I like to have the color at hand and see what I like to use for my projects. I have previously done a lot of color work. That's how I started up again. Maybe we can look at it in an upcoming episode. But I have the shade card from Jameson's of Shetland and the Jameson and Smith. And at first I thought this was the same company, but don't mistake, it isn't. It is 2 different companies, and I really like to have these cards at hand. I can see the different colors and what would look nice together, and Jameson has kindly provided on the inside of the cover here which type of yarns they have. 1 ply, 2 plies, jumbo weight, and so on. And I have bought a cone here with a 2 ply jumbo weight to make a garment. And the other one from Jameson's, I guess they've spent a bit more money and time on presenting their colors. Wow, what do you say? It is a delight for my eyes with all these shades. And I especially like all the mottled yarns. We call it meleret garn. in Danish, and here are the ones not dyed. So yeah, a lot to look at and pick for your projects. And I especially like from the Jamesons this spindrift, nice and airy. I made these hats, even though I told you I don't wear hats that often, but I wanted to play with this kind of graduating the color, and yeah, so I made different kinds. This is a pattern, and I elaborated a bit on the pattern for this one. I guess we can talk about them in an upcoming episode, also hat math and how to easily make a hat to fit your head. And the last one I will show you is the yarn from Hillerksvåg. It's also a Norwegian yarn. So I have color cards from them. Ask. I also bought cones to make and yeah, skeins to make sweaters. So a lot of yarn for future upcoming projects. This is the modeled ones from Ask. And I also have other Rauma brands. This is the Minto, it's alpaca and wool. Yeah, so this was enough about yarn and yarn cards and yeah, color flavors. So let's steam block this Fivel gauge watch, the towel. Wow, what a difference, right? And yeah, we could talk more about it, but usually you would recommend a 3-ply yarn to do cables, and this is only a 2-ply yarn. But yeah, what do you think? Let me just show you how I make these cables in this twisted forest sweater. So even though I'm not on a cable row, so to speak, I'll show it to you anyway. So here we are. So I've done cables a couple of times before in different knitwear, so I don't use the helping needle. I just do like this. So I just, because they lean to the left, so I take these 2 stitches, just shift them on the needle. There are different ways of doing it, a lot of nice videos out there. But yeah, that's how it is. But let's have a look at how it looks like before and after blocking. So this is, yeah, of course, a very stretchy pattern with the cables. So this is how it looks like before. And you saw before that we blocked the items. So this is how it looks like afterwards. So I think the definition is fairly good, even though it's a 2-ply yarn. So you can see here before it was 20 stitches and 23 rows, and now it's 18 stitches and 23 rows. So it gets a bit wider, of course, as expected. Yeah, so now we saw how I made these cables, so let's have a look at the design. You can see it is just like the sweater for my grandson, just in a bigger size. So let me show you how I get into this design, so that I avoid doing too much if I have to rip back and adjust measurements or something like it. So for one, I never break the yarn. So I start up with 1 ball doing the back, and I stop here when I have finalized the increases, and use the same ball of yarn to pick up stitches on this shoulder, being the right shoulder. Then I knit the shoulder part until under the neck here, and I use this ball to cast on the stitches in for the neck, and then I stop. Then I use another ball of yarn to pick up the stitches on the other shoulder and knit until we meet this part again. Then I have 2 balls with yarn here. The one ball I use to finalize the neckline, and the other ball I use to go further on the front side here until I have designed how I would like the design of the sleeve. And then this ball ends here at the sleeve side. I then further use this ball to design kind of the start of the sleeve to see if it fits me, or I should pick up fewer or more stitches, or how I would start the increases at the start here. In this way, I have kind of the overall design of the sweater before I move on to continue the rest of the back, using the same principle for the increases of the armpit, and continue with the body. This is how I do it. And I guess by now I am soon ready to do the ribbing on the bottom part and finalize the second sleeve. And I guess by now I have used, is it 6 bullet skeins of this one? I bought 14. I don't think I will use 14, but now I have learned rather one excess ball than one too little or too few. So yeah, this is where I am, and I look very much forward to having this one, and I've tried it myself, and I would really much like this for myself. I would say this is kind of a unisex sweater. However, this time I made this for my husband again, and he would like the neckline to be a bit deeper because he would like to wear a shirt and sometimes a tie. So let's see how this sweater looks with a tie. And it suits him very well with this thicker yarn because he's not like me, so isolated, so he is often very cold, and actually he wears up to 6 layers at a time to keep warm. So I will show him the properties of wool and give him a sweater where he can maybe reduce to 3 layers or something. So yeah, I will continue finalizing this one, and I have made the pattern in Word for this size. So now I have to grade it for other sizes, just like I did for the kids' sweater. Yeah. Yeah. The next working process is actually a finished object, yet being in the progress again, because my husband wanted longer sleeves. So now I will show you what I'm doing, because I thought, yeah, this will let me to learn yet another technique. So I took the sleeve and I put in cords in every row, in 2 rows with a stitch in between, and then I made a cut and took out the yarn. So now I have the cuff here on these needles, and I have the sleeve here on the other needle. So now I have to figure out how to stitch it together so that you cannot see it, because I prolonged the sleeve here with 10 stitches, and can you see here it is blocked and here it's unblocked, so you can see it is a bit more stretchy than when it's blocked, and it's actually quite fun to look at it again. You can really see the difference, right? So yeah, 10 more centimeters, and I'm in between doing this, so I have to watch and rewatch a YouTube video on how to do it correct. Yeah, I'm used to doing the Italian bind off and Kitchener stitch, so well, I mean, it can be learned, can't it? So this was one sleeve, and once I've done this, I will do the same on the second sleeve. So yeah, he has actually worn it a lot with the short sleeves, but said, yeah, well, I guess they stopped here. So yeah, of course I will prolong the sleeves. Let me give you a short update of two other whips of mine. The first one is this Christmas sweater designed by Hanne Larsen, a Danish designer. She calls it Stjernedrys. I translated into Startdust. And look at these snow crystals or snowflakes. Aren't they nice? I'm totally in love with it. And it went so well, and I could have finalized in a jiffy, I guess, but then I missed out a yarn again. This has become my thing. So half a sleeve missing and the other sleeve, and I had to order new yarn, and I got it the day before yesterday. So now I can finalize this sweater. But yeah, I figured out I could use this stash yarn when I had the overview. I started using stash yarn. I thought I had enough, but I must somehow have mixed it around with the light gray and the dark gray because, yeah, there wasn't enough of the dark gray. But then the upside of it is that I have enough yarn to make another one in light gray here. Yeah, in the last episode, you heard me elaborate about the color choices and that it seemed as if this icy blue actually looked purple together with this dark gray. That's how it is with the wavelength of color. That's another story. But now I've come to terms with it and I like it very much. I talked to Robin about this sweater because usually when I make sweaters, he says, oh, this sweater is for me, Grandma. And I say, no, this is for another one. No, just knit for me, he says. And this time I said, well, now there's one final here soon. Should we give this to Valde? He's my bonus grandson. And Robin said, yeah, you can give it to Valde. Or whether or not he is generous or he doesn't like the color, I don't know. But we will gift wrap this for Valde this time and make another one for Robin. Yeah, so moving on to the second whip here. You've seen it before, this champagne cardigan from Petiteknit. But now I will just tell you that I have solved the puzzle on how come this has been procrastinating so much. It's of course because I knit back and forth and not in the round, which is my preferable way of knitting. So I've solved it. Ta-da! I've just introduced a steek. So I cast on some extra stitches and started steeking, working in the round, and now I've got quite a way further with it. So now I only miss some more centimeters here and I can start the ribbing for the hem and then continue with the neckband and the sleeves and so on. So hopefully soon, I will not promise that it will be in the next episode, but hopefully soon I can get it finalized and wear it for you to see. Yeah. You may have wondered, what is it she's wearing in her ears today? These are small sheep. I found them at a yarn fair here in Denmark. Ain't they cute? So I thought these sheep will actually suit very well to this section. However, you will see in a minute, this is definitely not a merino sheep. But let's dig into it. I've done a lot of exploration and I will try to restrain myself from getting too far with all that I've learned, but share some points here because, yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. Let's look at the first poster because I thought it was very fun to look actually at the facts of fiber. So how many sheep and how much wool and so on. And I found this amazing website called IWTO. It stands for International Wool Texture Organization. And they have everything you need to know of the whole supply chain of wool. So if you're interested, have a look. It's very fun to see. So I have data from 2022. So let's look at the manufacturing of wool and how many sheep. So actually there are, yeah, it's such a big number. The most of them, they are in China, followed by India, and then Australia. So how much wool do sheep produce? And IWTO, they measure it in, all this is new to me, but they measure it in greasy wool and clean wool. And they measure it in kilos. This stands for million kilos. So again, a number not even possible to pronounce, I would say, but really, really much wool. And this number increases every year, I could see. And this corresponds to a lot of sweaters. But let's try to break it down to numbers that we can more easily comprehend. So one sheep will produce in average 1.6 kilos of wool per year, and this will provide you enough wool for approximately 6 sweaters. So ain't it funny thinking that when you knit 6 sweaters in a year, you have one whole sheep for yourself out there in the world providing you with the wool. Wow. And if you are a very keen knitter, you could have a whole farm for yourself. But yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot of knowledge to do. But okay, I then dug into the history of sheep and where's the first sheep and where did it come from and where did it travel in the world and so on. I find all these things so amazing and interesting, but I will spare you of, of the traveling of sheep from ancient times, way, way, way far back before birth of Christ. But let's start in the medieval ages and in the 12th century, because then the merino sheep as we know it today originated in Spain, and it was actually introduced by a tribe of Arabic Moors, so Muslims. Um, they ruled in that area back then, but enough said about that. And these merinos, they were highly prized for their fine wool, and actually if you sold a sheep or gave it away, gifted it, then you could be punished by death. So really prized these sheep, and this was carried on until year 1700 actually. But as the Spanish Empire kind of declined, then the merinos were sold and gifted and spread to other regions in the world. And actually the Dutch, they brought the merinos to their South African colonies. And in 1797, a flock of 26 merinos was brought to Australia, originating from the royal flock actually. So to cut a long story short, today Australia has further selectively bred these merinos, and they are the world's leading manufacturers of wool and fine, very fine merino wool. So yeah, the world's foremost trade center, you could say. Yeah, but what is a merino sheep? You can tell I'm a newbie here, so everything is amazing, and I will share. Maybe some of you haven't thought about the sheep you knit with the wool, just as I did, but the more you knit and the more you learn, or at least I do, then I want to dig deeper and see what is it and where does it come from, and how does it all add up. So let's move on to the slide of the merino. Here you can see the merino, and it is bred in this way to create as much wool per square inch, you could say, on the animal. And it can actually produce 227 pounds of wool in its lifetime, which is around 10 to 12 years. And I said this is the very fine wool, feeling soft to the skin, and they have these large curly horns, and they are white all over their wool. So you could say that you have bred this sheep to carry as much wool as possible, but are there any cons? Yes, there is, because these sheep may be so heavy and collapse and die of heat exhaustion if in a very hot weather, and because you could say that this is an unnatural overload of wool. And in between these wrinkles it collects moisture, and as you know, moisture collects sweat and bacteria and can be a site which can be attacked by different infections. So yeah, this is also a con. And when speaking of these cons and the merinos, the one of the worst things happening is what you call a fly strike. And this is a parasitic infestation by fly larvae. You could call them maggots, and they grow inside this host, that is the sheep, and feeding on the sheep's tissue. And it is very painful and potentially life-threatening for the sheep. And these flies, they are very much attracted to the urine and feces-soaked fleece in the backside, the buttocks of the sheep. I learned you also call it the breech. So when you look at the label and see that it is labeled mulesing free, what does that mean? It means that the farmer has not used this preventative action in order to prevent fly strike. And what they do, because it is a real dilemma, fly strike is bad, and mulesing cutting is also not so nice because it is painful with no anesthesia. They cut and remove the wool bearing parts of skin around the buttocks, so that you can see here on the picture the wool will not grow in this area, and hence less what do you call it, likely to get an infection. And this is a common practice and allowed in Australia. I guess this was enough about merino wool and merino sheep of today and in general, and hence finalizing this series I've had about fiber and merino and wool in general. We've reached the end of the episode now. Somehow on the way I saw that I lost the light on this side of the video, appearing darker here in this side and that side. But yeah, as I said, I'm a newbie within YouTubing and lighting and so on, so I hope you can bear with me. And I intentionally started this video thinking that it should be less jam-packed with info and yeah, whatever this time, but I guess we ended up with a lot of info anyway. So yeah, maybe that's how I am. Luckily you can fast forward and backwards as you like. But yeah, I hope you liked it anyway, and hopefully I will see you back again in my next episode. So until then, have a nice life, nice knitting, and see you later. Roger and over from Ingesknittinglab. Color me happy. Bye bye.